So we're going to start chapter 2 of Excel. In the first chapter, you learned how to enter data, use sum functions, format the worksheet, and make your worksheet just a little bit easier to read. So today we're going to, or for this unit actually, we're going to go into that a little bit further. You're going to use all the things that you did in the first unit, and then you're going to add to it. The first thing I want to do is have you open up an Excel document. The next thing I want you to do is to flip to the page in your packet that has student notes. And one of the first questions that is asked is, what is a function? So let's go ahead and identify the difference between a function and a formula. So a function is a pre-written formula in Excel. You are familiar with these. This is the sum function, the average function, the minimum function, the maximum function. There are tons of others that we won't even get anywhere close to using all of them, but they exist, and so it's important when you are working with Excel and you want to do something with data, check the function spot, and we'll show you how to do that so that you can find out if there's already something written that would help you. The project that you're going to be completing while this video is going, so I just want to reiterate that because there was some confusion last time. Make sure that you are doing what I am doing on the Excel document. So you should have an Excel worksheet open and be ready and pausing when necessary to complete what it is that I'm doing. So this project is going to we're going to be creating a salary report for an employer. This employer has to pay their employees, and they want to make sure that they've got accurate, up-to-date information, so that's what we'll be doing. I want to point out that it is important when you're using Excel that you kind of have a rough draft of what it is you think you want in the program. That will go a long way to helping you create a worksheet without having to redo a lot of stuff. All right. So the very first step, as you know, is that we're going to have to create our title. So type on A1. We're going to put in Hypermass Online Storage. And when you go to A2, we'll type in Salary Report. Now we'll create our column headings. So the first one will be in A3, and it'll be employee. Go on over to B3, where we'll type dependents. Then you'll go on over to C3, and sometimes when you're creating a report, you want to stack your words. So we're going to do that in C3, and I'm going to show you how you can do it. What we're going to type is hours worked, but we want hours to be on top of the word worked. And you can't press enter, because if you try, look what happens. If I do hours and I enter, it goes to the next cell. So we're going to come up here, and just so that we're doing it together, I'll retype it, hours. And then you want to hit Alt. You want to press and hold Alt and enter, and then type worked. It keeps you in the same cell. When you get out of it, you'll see that hours is above worked. So the way that I did that was I pressed Alt, and at the same time I clicked on enter. We're going to do the same thing in D3. We're going to say hourly. Oops. And then hit Alt, enter, and type pay rate. Once again, hourly is above pay rate. In E3, we're going to type gross pay. In F3, we'll type federal tax. In G3, we'll type state tax. In H3, we'll type tax percent. In I3, we'll type net pay. And in J3, we should be able to type hire date. Go on to A4, and we'll type the first employee. We'll start with the last name followed by a comma and then the first name, Carl Michael. Tab over to the next one and type in the number 3. Tab again and type in 60.45. Tab again and type 19.5. Tab again and type, I'm sorry, this one we want to go over to the higher date. So we want to go to J4 and type 4/5/10. Click over to A5 and continue typing the data in. I'm going to pause, type it in, and you'll have the full amount, at which point you can pause and fill in your table. This is the full amount of what you need to enter, so go ahead and pause right now and then turn it back on when you are ready to move on. Now look at your Sheet tab, double click on it and type in Salary Report. Right click and find a tab color that is green, and also save your document. You'll want to save it as Hypermass Online Storage Salary Report. Now it's time to go back to your notes, and let's talk about a formula, because you're going to be entering this unit. A formula is a calculation that you specifically write into the cell. So this is different from a function because it's not a button you can simply press and boom, there's a calculation that exists in that cell. So if you wanted to calculate 10% of a number that's in another cell, then you'd write 10% equals 10% times with the asterisk representing multiplication, and then whatever cell you want to multiply by 10%. So you're creating a formula. There's some things that you need to know about formulas. What is a circular reference? A circular reference is a formula that's in a cell that contains a reference back to itself. In most cases, this is the result of an incorrect formula. So if Excel warned you about this, don't just dismiss it. It means you've got an error. So you want to pay attention to what they're saying. That's why I'm including this as part of your notes. So a circular reference would be one where it's including, it can't calculate because the information comes from its own cell. There are two different types of circular references. One is a direct and the other is indirect. Direct is when you place the name of the cell that you want to pull information from into the cell where the calculations are to be made. So for example, if I'm in cell A1 and I want to pull information from A1, Excel's going to say, no, you can't do that, and that's a direct circular reference. An indirect circular reference, and by the way, a direct circular reference is a little bit easier to identify, so when you see that you go, oh yeah, duh, and you change it. But an indirect circular reference is when you've put a formula in a cell. So let's say that you put a formula into cell C1, and you tell that in that formula you say to pull information from B1, but then in B1 you're asking to pull information from C1. So that one you have to sort of follow the trail and find, oh yeah, that was a mistake, and that would be considered an indirect circular reference. Again, this is important because if you get a message from Excel indicating direct circular reference, indirect circular reference, or just circular reference, you got to know what it's talking about so that you can make that adjustment. Let's head back over to Hypermass. Let's head over to E4, select that cell, and we're going to enter our very first formula. So in that cell, we're determining gross pay. You would have already been given this information if you were creating this worksheet for me or for someone else, but I'm going to tell you what gross pay equates to. It's your hours worked times your hourly rate. So we want to pull, in this cell, we want our formula to say equal, because we have to explain to Excel that we're creating a formula. And we want to pull the information from C4 and multiply it by D4. And then we can enter. Before we go any further, flip back to our teacher notes and let's identify and understand some of the different calculations you might see. So this is what you need to be aware of. The minus sign right here up at the top and up down at the bottom, it can denote a negative number. So if it's just alone with a number, then it's saying that it's negative whatever. But if it's in between, it's going to say 22 minus something, then you know that it's subtracting. You can use the percent sign to denote a percentage. So in a bit, we're going to be entering a formula that requires a percentage. We're going to multiply something by a percent, and so we can use the percent sign. If you're needing to do something that has an exponential piece to it, then you'll use that caret. The asterisk is multiplication, so 61.5 asterisk C5 is 61.5 times whatever's in C5. And the slash, the forward slash, represents divide. So H3 divided by 12 is the contents of H3 divided by 12. The plus and the minus are obviously the ones that you understand. The other thing that's important for you to know are the order of operations. So Excel follows the same algebraic order that you're familiar with. So when you're entering a formula, you got to realize what Excel's going to do first. And the first, and this up here is what it's going to do in order. So it'll negate something and then move on to percentages and exponentiation and multiplication all the way to subtraction will be the last thing that happens. Okay? Oops. Okay, there we go. So take a look at this. If you have 8 times 3 plus 2, Excel's going to tell you it's 26. 8 times 3, because the multiplication happens before the addition, plus 2, 24 plus 2. But if you want to change it, and what you meant to say was 3 plus 2, and then that number multiplied by 8, it will do parenthetical operations first. So it'll do anything that's within the parentheses. So that's important to know as you're trying to figure out what you want it to do. Don't just necessarily throw in numbers. Realize that you can use parentheses to tell Excel what to do. We are going to begin entering some formulas, and I'm going to be using point mode as the way to enter formulas. So I want to introduce what it is. It's just an alternative way to enter a formula without actually typing the cell name. That can be nice when you're dealing with multiple formulas because sometimes you just get your cells confused, and so you meant to type C4 but you accidentally typed B4. This is actually you choose the cell by clicking on it. So if I'm ever talking about point mode or asking you to correct using point mode, you need to show me that you know what you're talking about, that you understand what point mode is and that you can use it. Go ahead and open your Excel document and go ahead and click on F4. The first formula we're going to enter is we're going to start with the equal sign. We're going to take 0.22 times, and then do the beginning of our parentheses. And then we're going to select cell E4. So we're just going to point on E4, and you'll notice that it highlights and it also sticks it into our formula. At this point, we will subtract B4. and take that times, so that means we have to do the asterisk, 24.32, and end our parentheses. We can tap enter. You can go up here to tap enter. Let's go over what we just did. Our federal taxes, we took 0.22 times E4, which is our gross pay, and subtracted B4 times, so for each number that's in B4, that number will be multiplied by 24.32. Now I'll go over to G4, and we're going to hit the the equal sign. 0.04 times, and we want to select E4. And hit enter. Now we'll go to H4. Enter the equal sign and the beginning of our parentheses. Tap on F4 plus G4, end our parentheses, divide that by E4, and enter. So let's look at what we did here. We took F4 plus G4, so we took our federal tax, and our state tax, and divided it by our gross pay. Click over to I4, type the equal, click on E4, minus, start your parentheses, F4, plus G4, end your parentheses, and enter. Now we can quickly copy these formulas. We just want to copy them all the way down to the 12th row. We don't want to re-enter everything. So we can highlight all of that, go until we have a skinny plus, and bring it all the way down, and now we've got those formulas in there. So if I click on here, it'll automatically update that it's pulling all the information from row 9. You'll see that in your formula, and it looks right. Now it's time for us to total. Not every column should be totaled. For example, it makes no sense to total up the dependents. That's not something that would be appropriate when you're dealing with a salary report. It is appropriate to sum up your hours worked, so we'll go ahead and sum that up. We can hit enter. It's also appropriate for us to sum up gross pay, federal tax, and state tax. So we can highlight all three of those and click on the sum button. Again, hourly pay rate, we don't need the total. That doesn't make sense to do that. So that's not something we pay attention to. And also, it isn't appropriate to add our total on the tax percentage or the hire date. So the only other total that we are looking for is with net pay. What we would like to do in H13 is we would like to copy the information. So really what we want to do is we want to take F13, add it to G13, and divide it by E13. We want to know what the total tax percentage is. So what we'll do is just copy that formula down. Okay. You'll notice there's a green triangle in the corner. If I go up and I click on that, a little note comes up and says the formula in this cell differs from the formulas in this area of the spreadsheet. So basically, Excel has picked up on the fact that I've been doing sum functions in all of the other cells in 13, and suddenly I'm not doing a sum function. But what I've done is right, and so I want to keep it, so I can click on the drop down and say ignore error, and the triangle disappears. The next step in creating our salary report worksheet is to compute the highest value, lowest value, and the average right over here. So we've got functions that we can use to do that. I want you to flip to your notes for just a moment. I want to show you something that I want you to copy down. There are 5 ways you can access functions. In this chapter, we will hit 3 of the 5. Okay? So one way is through the keyboard. You can insert the function box in the formula bar. You can use the sum menu. You can use the sum button, which I just realized I put the wrong word, and then you can use the name box area in the formula bar, which we'll practice. So go ahead and open up your worksheet again. Highlight B14. And one way you can find your functions is to go to the Insert Function box. Click on it. You'll notice it automatically throws an equal sign into the cell. And you can scroll and see different functions, but you can also type a brief search. We don't need to because we can see ours is max. So we go ahead and click it and then say OK. And it's going to ask what is it that we want, what are the cells that we want, and we want to do B4 through B12, so we're going to change that 13 to a 12 and click OK. And what it did is it picked our highest number in that cell. Now go ahead and click B15. Let's go ahead and use another way to find a function, one you're familiar with. You'll just come up here and use the sum button, click on the drop down box, and you can find minimum. And you can very quickly, right now it's just highlighted B14, that was where we were, but you can very quickly just click and drag down what it is you wanted to add, and it pops in B4 through B12, which is correct, so then you can click enter. Now move on down to B16, and another way that you can find a function is to simply type equal and then the beginning letters of what it is you want to find. So we know we're looking for the average. I'm going to type in AV, I see it, and I can click on it, and then I can highlight what it is I want to average. Now, we don't want to do this for every single column, so we're going to go ahead and do the autofill and drag it over. We will not include higher date because it doesn't make sense. We can do this for highest and lowest. We run into a bit of a problem when we try to do the average on this column, the tax percentage. This is mathematically an incorrect thing to do, so we're going to go ahead and delete it. At this point, it's a great time to go ahead and save. And then go back to your teacher notes. One of the more common mistakes in Excel is that people will include incorrect cell references. There is an easy way to verify that a formula reference is what you want it to be. Okay? So you can use the range finder to identify incorrect cell references and how you activate them. To activate the range finder, you simply double click on the cell with the formula that you want to verify, and when you do, it highlights the cells that you're referencing in that formula. So let's give it a try. Go back to your worksheet, click on, let's try this again, click on W4, but this time double click, H4, double click, and you'll see that it throws out the formulas, the cells that are being referenced in that formula. So it's nice and easy to see. I don't get lost in letters that would be easy for me to get mistaken. In order to get out of that, press the Escape key up at the top left corner of your keyboard. Now we've got all of our data, so it's time to make our worksheet something that's easy to look at. You can see that this is overwhelming with just a lot of raw information, and it's not very meaningful. So it's our job to make it something that's eye-appealing and a lot more meaningful. So we'll start by choosing our theme. We're going to try and find basis. Hopefully all of you will be able to do that. Then we're going to select A1 through J1, and we'll want to merge and center. We'll select A2 through J2 and also merge and center. We're going to highlight both A1 and A2 and go to our cell styles, and we're going to add the title cell style. We're going to click on A2 and actually decrease the font one time, so it's just a tad smaller. We're going to add a background fill color to our title so that it makes it stand out. We'll also add a border to it. So highlight A1 and A2 and go to your background fill color and add green. Then you can find your border box, and you want to do a thick box border around it. So when you see that you've clicked out of it, it makes it stand out just a little bit. Now it's time to start working with row 3, so we'll highlight row 3. And we want to apply the heading 3 cell style. And we want to highlight row 13 and apply the total cell style. And then we want to highlight A14 through A16, and we'd like to bold that. Now it's time to begin formatting dates. So we're going to highlight J4 through J12. We're going to click our format cells and then click on number and date. We're already on number, so we'll go to date. And we want to choose the date that says 3/14/12. We do not want the 03, we want just the 3. Say OK, so that everything is formatted the same. Now we want to select B4 through B16, and we'd like to center those numbers, making them just a little bit easier to identify. You can select any cell to get out of that. Now it's time to apply the accounting and comma style formats. So let's select D4 through G4. And we'll go ahead and at the same time we'll want to press and hold Control while we select the next several things. So press and hold Control and then select I4. E13 through G13 and I13. And then let up on the Control key and click your $sign up top. Now we want to select D5 through G12. Press and hold the Control key. And then choose I5 through I12. Let up off the Control key, and it's time to apply the comma. We also want to select C4 through C16 and apply the comma style to that as well, ensuring that we have the proper number of decimal amounts, which is 2, which is what we want. Now we're going to apply a floating $, so that's going to look a little bit different. You'll notice this has a gap, this $, between the number, but select D4 and go all the way through G16, press and hold Control, and then click I14 through I16. Let off your Control and go to the Format dialog box, Format Cells, go to Currency, and you want to choose the third option, which is the black colored $1,234.10 with the $, and click OK. And you'll notice in these examples the $, is right up next to the amount. And that's called a floating $. That will be important later in one of your assignments, so make sure that you remember to do that. Now it's time to apply the percent style format, so we're going to select H4 through H16. And we'll do the percent style. And we want to click the increase decimal button 2 times so that it goes out. There we go. 2 decimal points. Now we want to apply some conditional formatting. So we want some of our cells to highlight based off of certain rules. So we're looking for any cell with a value greater than 70 to have an orange background with a white font color. So let's highlight cells C4 through C12 because that's where we're interested. C4 through C12, and then click on Conditional Formatting. And we want to create a new rule. And we want to go down to format only cells that contain. The cell value is greater than, and then on the far right we want to type in 70. So if a cell value in one of those cells is greater than 70, what do we want it to do? So now we've got to click Format. And see, we are on the Font tab, so we want the font color to go white, and we want the fill to be orange. I think I like that one better, so we'll go with that, sort of a rust color. And then say OK, and that's what it'll look like. So any cell that has a value greater than 70 will look like that. And say OK. When you click, you'll see which ones fit into that rule. And that is known as conditional formatting. Now it's time for us to change some of our rows and columns in terms of height and width. So when Excel starts, it displays a blank worksheet that has common defaults. So our columns are 8.43 characters or 64 pixels wide, and then our rows have a set height, and that's 15 points or 20 pixels. Flip over to your teacher notes and let's get down what a pixel is. A pixel is short for picture element, and it refers to a dot on the screen that contains color. And we have to increase or decrease the number of pixels to change the width and height accordingly. When you go back over to the spreadsheet, you can change your width and your height a couple of different ways. I'm going to show you a couple, but I'm actually in the worksheet I'm going to show you. But I want to show you one other thing you can do that doesn't come up. You can click on this format and you'll see row height and column height. So that's a way, and then you can just enter in what you're looking for if it's very specific. Flip back over and let's do, how do you change column width? You can do it manually, or you can instruct Excel to size the column to best fit. Best fit means that the width of the column is increased or decreased so that the widest entry fits into the column. So we're back over here. Let's highlight columns A and B. First, I want to show you when you have an arrow that's pointing all the way down or all the way over, that's selecting the entire column. So, and when you change the width of one column that's selected, like if you have multiple columns selected and you change the width of one, all of them change. So we're going to do a best fit right now. So when I have the the split double arrow, I'm going to double click and you'll notice that it just automatically fit so that Juan Rodriguez was our longest name and now his name fits, so we're all good to go. Let's go over to G until we have our split double arrow and change that to 1025. So we can just drag to 1029 will work. Then we can select column C, press and hold Control and select column D and H and let up on the Control button, and then we can drag until our width is 7.5. Now click on E, press and hold Control, F, and I, and let's go ahead and do it the way that I was showing you earlier. You can do column width and do 10.5 and click OK. Let's do our rows. Now we're going to go to row 3, and currently it's at 44, and we want to take it down to 48, so we can just click and drag to 48. Or you can format row height as 48 and format row 13 height as 27. So already we see that we have some problems. Let's go ahead and double click C to best fit and double click E to best fit so that we make sure if you've got those hashtags, it's because your columns are not wide enough. Okay, so we're going to change it now to our page layout view. Because of my bar, you can't see what I'm doing, so I'll do it down here. This is your page layout view, and what you notice is that it does add a header. So I'm going to go ahead and widen this out now. Go to page layout. We want to change our margin to narrow. We want to click in the header, and we want to type your name, hit enter, and then type Chief Financial Officer. I want to let you know that you do have a review. Once we get out of the header, you would have to deselect and go somewhere else. But you have a review where you can check your spelling, and I would encourage you to do that anytime you're creating a worksheet. Now go back to page layout, change your orientation to landscape. You can choose to print just a portion of your worksheet. Sometimes worksheets can be very long. Columbia Public Schools, Rockbridge in particular, uses Excel to create the schedule for all of the teachers, and it is dozens of pages long. So if you wanted to just print one part of it, you can do that. So the way that you would do it, let's practice, is you would select the range of cells that you want to print and then go through a process to do that. So we're going to select A3 through E16, click and drag. There we go. Oops, E16. There we have it. Then we'll click on File, go to Print, Print to Active Sheets. We want to do the drop-down box. And we want to print selection, and then it's only doing the selection that we've told it to do. You'll want to choose the printer. I've told you guys that we have a printer now in the room you're in, and so if you do not have something, it won't be exactly like this. It says room 331. that needs to be chosen. I can show you how to do that, but you can actually go down to add a printer, click on Columbia, type on RBHS in the name, click Find Now, and if you scroll down, you'll see this 400 in room 331. That's the one you would want to select right here. Okay. Double click it, and then in a moment, it'll think for a little bit, but then in a moment it'll be there. Let's go back to our to our notes, sorry. How do you print only a section of the worksheet? That's the steps. Let's go ahead and finish up our notes as we only have a couple of more things. We're about to learn the very end of this, which is the values version of a worksheet and the formulas version. The values version is what you see normally when you're typing. It's the results of the formulas. So you enter the formula, but you don't see that. You're looking at the number. The formulas version actually shows you the formula, and it's a really quick way to see if you've made a mistake. And the way that you do that is you press the Control key and the accent mark. The accent mark is the button to the left of the number 1 key on the far left, top left corner of your keyboard. Debugging is the process of finding and correcting errors. So when you want to debug your worksheet, then you want to go to the formulas version and look for any mistakes. So before you ask me to come and review your worksheets for this unit, what you want to do is debug them first. And I'll be asking, have you debugged it? Which means you should have already gone to the Control Accent formula version and looked for any mistakes. Currently, we are looking at the values version, but if I press Control and the accent mark, I'm in the formula version. And so I am able to scroll over and see all of the formulas, and I can verify that they're looking correct. Okay? If I want to do the rangefinder, I can do that as well. All right? To go back to the values version, I hit Control accent mark again, and I'm back the way that I was. Now, you'll need to print this so that you can get a grade for it. So you'll go to File, Print, and this time you'll want to scale it so that it fits sheet on 1 page. You'll notice that my page is blank. That's a problem. So I click over here and I go, oops, I forgot to go back to Print Active Sheets. When I click back to Print Active Sheets, I can see everything, which is exactly what I want. So then you'll go ahead and print, and you're ready to go. Please save your work and make a copy of your notes so that you can get points. For this, you'll be turning in the full form, the full worksheet. Then you'll also need to turn in the sectioned worksheet from A3 to E16, and then you'll need a copy of your notes. Those 3 things are for points with this. Have fun, you guys, this unit.